All right, so I called this Bible study Placed by God, and we're going to look at the geography with a healthy dose of pictures of the settling of the 12 tribes. And don't concern yourself. There's a handout with like all the scriptures. I'll read some of them. I'll call on Dan. You're the Hebrew word expert, so I'll have you read all the hard to pronounce locations, right? Yeah. No, we'll probably skip most of the names. They're not really relevant for the most part. Anyway, so don't worry about memorizing details. You've got the map on your handout. It'll be up here. But try to make big picture connections, especially as we get to the end. There will be a couple questions that we want to ask ourselves as we roll over into the sermon after lunch, because it'll build on the Bible study. All right, so here we go. And make sure that this pointer works. There we go. All right, so first of all, not everyone's a geography buff. I'm a map nerd, so just to make sure that we know where the promised land, the land of Canaan, modern day Israel, where that is pretty much stuck right in the middle of Europe, Asia, and Africa. If you want to cross between them, that's going to be right there in the middle where those meet. Come on. And in the ancient world, when you look at all the old empires, so here's the Egyptian Empire, the Hittites, going a little too fast there, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, technical difficulties. Not sure. Why we're not moving. Can you just go to the next one? We got the Greek, then it should be the Roman is in purple. And then the next one. All right, go one more. You notice right in the middle, right where they kind of all overlap, that's the promised land. That's where God has his people settle, right in the middle of everything in the ancient world. All right, go ahead to the next one. All right, so before we actually look at the divisions themselves, you might be wondering, there are 13 divisions of land, but there are 12 tribes. So how does that work? Because we've got three divisions on the east side of the Jordan River, 10 on the west side. That's 13. Sorry, the aspect ratio on the screen and my computer are a little bit different, so it cut out the bottom. But we've got 10 regular allotments. But the tribe of Joseph is split in two. You got Ephraim and Manasseh itself is split in two because they're on the east and the west. So 10 plus 2 plus 1 is 13, and 0 for Levi. Sorry, guys. So 13 allotments, 13 tribes. So that's how the math works out. So if you're ever confused about that, yes, it does work out. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so let's go ahead. I think we'll be completely in Joshua. So if you want to follow along in your Bibles, there are a number of places in Deuteronomy and Numbers and Joshua where it talks about the allotments, but we'll just be going through in Joshua and reading all about the different allotments. So we'll be starting in Joshua 13 and verse 15. That's the correction on the handout. It says 13:13, but 13:15. Joshua 13:15 to talk about the land of Reuben. So while you're turning there, the land is going to be divided up, starting from the south, moving to the north, because that's the way they came in. They came from the south, moving up to the north before they crossed over. And here on the east side, we'll see that it's a lot easier to guess where the boundaries are because it will specifically say from this river to this river. And we'll actually go ahead and go to the next one. We'll start looking at those just so that you have an idea of hard boundaries make good sense in this part of the country. So in the Bible, it talks about the boundary. This is the southern end of the Dead Sea, the boundary between Edom and Moab. That's the river Zered in the Bible. The Arabs these days call it Wadi al-Hassa. Go ahead to the next one and we'll get some pictures. So it's just kind of a seasonal creek. It's cut a canyon down into the rocks. All right, then go to the next one. Then the boundary between Moab and Reuben, again, this is one of those concrete barriers. There's a river that goes through there. Biblically, they called it the river Arnon. The Arabs, modern-day Jordanians, call it Wadi Mujib. And again, you want to go to the next one, there will be a picture there. They actually call it the Grand Canyon of Jordan because it's cut such a deep canyon. Click next for the next picture. If you get down in there, into the canyon, there's actually some really good hiking as long as you don't go during the rainy season because you'll get washed out. All right. Moving on to the next one. As you move north, the boundary that's going to be between Gad and eastern Manasseh is the river Jabbok. Okay, so this is going all the way back to the book of Genesis where Jacob wrestles with God along the banks of the river Jabbok. This is called the Zarqa is what the Arabs call it now. Go ahead and show them the picture there, Harem. All right, so it's a decent-sized river. We've actually waded out into it. Locals say that's kind of polluted, but we did it anyway. All right, and then the last one up to the north, this is kind of in the northern limits for the tribe of Manasseh. I don't think the Bible ever names it, but modern day, the Arabs call it Yarmouk. And again, if we go to the next one for the picture, you'll notice that it's like a canyon. So the barriers on the east side are physical things, rivers and hills that we know exactly where they're at. All right, so hope you're there in Joshua 13 by now. Now, the very first division goes to Reuben, and Reuben is the firstborn, so it kind of makes sense that when the tribes come and they ask Reuben and Gad and Manasseh, they ask for their inheritance early on the east side, Reuben will be given the first one. So that's in Joshua 13:15. It says, Moses had given to the tribe of the children of Reuben an inheritance according to their families. Their territory was from Aroer, which is on the bank of the river Arnon. So we saw a picture of that. So now you can kind of picture that terrain in your mind. And the city that is in the midst of the ravine, and all the plain by Madaba, Heshbon, and all of its cities that are in the plain. And then it lists the cities, Dibon, Bamoth. I'm not going to butcher too many of these. All the cities of the plain and all the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, who Moses had struck with the princes of Midian. The children of Israel, killed them, conquered their land. And the border of the children of Reuben was the bank of the Jordan. This was the inheritance of the children of Reuben, according to their families and the cities and their villages. So what does this look like? Let's go to the next slide and we'll start getting some pictures. This is modern day. This is in central Jordan. That's a view from Mount Nebo. When we go to the next one, see some indigenous wildlife. You're supposed to laugh. There we go. camel riding in the back of a truck there. So you notice it's pretty hilly, pretty dry. There's a little bit, there's some agriculture going on, but not a whole lot. Okay, when you go to the next one, the next tribe is going to be Gad. So if we keep reading in Joshua 13, in verse 24, Moses also had given an inheritance to the tribe of Gad, to the children of Gad according to their families. Is the mic still? Okay, there he goes. Was Jazer and all the cities of Gilead and half the land of the Ammonites as far as Aroer, which is before Rabbah, and from Heshbon to Ramath, Mizpah, and Betanim, and from Mahanaim to the border of Debir, and so on it goes forth. And this is the inheritance of the children of Gad, according to their families, the cities and their villages. So again, let's look at some pictures so you can get an idea in your mind of what these areas actually look like, because I would imagine the vast majority of us have not been there before. So this is moving a little bit further north as you're going into Jordan. You'll notice it's getting a little bit greener. Go to the next picture. There's a nice springtime shot when they actually get the rain, some grass growing, some orchards there. That's probably olive trees. Still very, very hilly area. All right, I want to go to the next one. This is the eastern portion of Manasseh, which will be in northern Jordan, and we could 29. Moses also had given an inheritance to half the tribe of Manasseh. It was for half the tribe of the children of Manasseh, according to their families. Their territory was from Mahanaim, all Bashan, all the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, and all the towns of Jair, which are in Bashan, 60 cities, half of Gilead, and Ashtaroth, and Edrei, cities of the kingdom of Og and Bashan, and so on and so forth. These are the areas which Moses had distributed as an inheritance in the plains of Moab on the other side of the Jordan, by Jericho eastward to the tribe. Okay, and we'll stop there. So again, we'll look at some pictures of that eastern portion of Manasseh. If you could go to the next slide. Now, this is now in northern Jordan, going up actually into I guess the Golan Heights in Israel or parts of Syria. Again, look, nice olive trees. There's actually forests up there. Nothing like not like the big forests like the cedars of Lebanon, but there's starting to be trees and actually enough rain up there to support forests. So it's more green, we notice as we move north. All right, and then that does it for the 3 allotments on the east side of the Jordan River. So we could go to the next slide. Right down the middle, dividing the east from the west, is the Jordan River itself. And when you think of river, you're too generous. Go ahead and show the picture. I've seen creeks. I've seen things called creeks that are wider than the Jordan River. And this is literally right where it comes out from the Sea of Galilee at its thickest or at its widest. By the time you get down to the Dead Sea, it's you could walk across, if it weren't for the machine guns and stuff at the border. But it's nice. There are fish and there are, otters and muskrats and stuff like that live in the water there. So if you ever want to, someone who wants to get baptized in a river with 5-foot-long catfish swimming around, I'll tell you a place where you can go for that. And we'll notice this also with the area. This is the biggest river. As small as it is, it's the biggest river, and it divides the land. There are no navigable rivers that you could put a boat on and sail from point A to point B in Israel. And the 2 big bodies of water, the Sea of Galilee is completely landlocked, and the Dead Sea is, as the name suggests, pretty dead. Like nothing lives there other than some bacteria. So you can't fish there. The mineral content, they still mine the area for fertilizer for the minerals, but not like a great sea. All right, so let's go on, and we'll look at the ones on the west of the Jordan. And the interesting thing is or one of the interesting things is on the east of the Jordan, they actually come ahead of time and say, we want it now. And so he gives them, starting with Reuben, the firstborn, and he gives 3 allotments on the east side. But on the west side, most of them are actually going to be given by lot. However they did that, casting stones or dice, or I'm not sure, pulling names out of a hat. And on this side, the boundaries are harder to draw. So if you look this up, if you try to look up maps, every map's going to be a little bit different, because we will see as we read through there's literally one inheritance that it says, from this tree going east. So it was very specific, and at this point, there's no way for us to know where exactly the boundaries were, but geologists, or the geographers and the archaeologists, try to do their best when they're finding cities and where that would be, and this was about the best map that I could find. Not that it's 100% correct, but also you'll notice, like here along the Mediterranean coast, there's this whole strip that should be in Judah, there with Ashdod and Ashkelon, Gaza, the cities of the Philistines. It was supposed to be part of Judah, but they never actually conquered that land, which is going to come back to bite them later on, because the Philistines are going to be a constant thorn in their side. And then sometimes there's actually duplicate names, and those will be like right on the border, or sometimes literally 2 cities and 2 different tribes with the exact same name. So that can kind of get confusing sometimes. But again, like, it's not important for when you're reading through there that you understand exactly where everything is, but just kind of big picture stuff. All right, so if we could go to the next one. The first one on the west side that's given is for the tribe of Judah. And that seems to be because when they had originally given when Moses had the spies go into the promised land to spy out the promised land, of course, who are the only 2 people that brought back a good report? It was Joshua and Caleb. And so when they go into the land and they conquer the cities, Caleb asks for a specific inheritance. And Caleb, being a Jew from the tribe of Judah, is given that area around that city, and then, well, we might as well just give Judah the rest of that area around there. So let's go ahead and read that in Joshua 15. For the land of Judah, Joshua 15, verse 1. So this was the lot of the tribe of Judah, of the children of Judah, according to their families. The border of Edom at the wilderness of Zin southward was the extreme southern boundary. On their southern border began at the shore of the Salt Sea, so the Dead Sea, from the bay that faces southward. Then it went out to the southern side of the ascent of Akrabim, passed along to Zin, ascended on the south side of Kadesh Barnea, passed along to Hezron, went up to Adar, and went around to Karka. From there, the border ended at the sea. This shall be your southern border. So, and it goes on from there. So what does that look like? Let's go ahead and look at some pictures. This is going to be southern Israel. There you get a nice springtime shot. There's actually grass. What does it look like most of the year? Let's look at the next picture. That's actually in the area of En-Gedi, where David hid from Saul. And the last picture, pretty desertous. You go out further south into the Negev desert, and it's like your stereotypical picture of the desert, the rocks, the sand, doesn't get much rain. That's what a large part of the portion of Judah looks like. Okay, so let's go to the next one. As we keep reading in Joshua, if you want to skip down to chapter 16, these next two, Ephraim and Western Manasseh, it's not really clear on which one got theirs first, but in the narrative, Ephraim is mentioned next. So we're in Joshua 16, verse 1. The lot fell to the children of Joseph from the Jordan. by Jericho to the waters of Jericho on the east, and to the wilderness that goes up from Jericho through the mountains to Bethel, then went out from Bethel to Luz, passed along to the border of the Archites at Adaroth, and went down westward to the boundary of the Japhletites, as far as the boundary of the lower Beth Horon to Gezer, and it ended up at the sea. And so the children of Joseph, Manasseh and Ephraim, took their inheritance. The border of the children of Ephraim, according to their families, was thus. The border of their inheritance on the east side was Adaroth Adar, as far as upper Beth Horon, and the border went out toward the sea on the north side of Mikmetheth. Say that 5 times fast. Then the border went around eastward to Taanath, Shiloh, and passed by it on the east to Genoa. And on it goes. And if you want to look at what that looks like, so let's go and see some pictures of that area. This is in central Israel. Again, still pretty rocky. Go to the next picture. A little bit of grass there. All right, and moving on. Kind of at the same time, we get Ephraim and Manasseh. Remember, they're both part of the tribe of Joseph. And Manasseh seems to be like directly west across the river from the eastern part of Manasseh. So they kind of have, except for the Jordan River, they kind of have an undivided swath going across there. And we can keep reading about that in chapter 17. All right, let's jump in to 17. We'll start in verse 7. And the territory of Manasseh was from Asher to Mikmetheth, that lies east of Shechem, and the border went along south to the inhabitants of En Tappuah. Manasseh had the land of Tappuah, but Tappuah on the border of Manasseh belonged to the children of Ephraim. So there will be a lot of like border towns mentioned. Like, well, it's technically in their land, but it belongs to the other tribe. And the border descended to the brook Cana, southward to the brook. These cities of Ephraim are among the cities of Manasseh. The border of Manasseh was on the north side of the brook, and it ended at the sea. And it goes on more about that. We want to look at some pictures so we get an idea of what the country looks like. All right. So this is actually at Bet Shean. Looking, you see those mountains out in the distance? That is Mount Gilboa. So if you remember where Saul and his son Jonathan die in battle at the foot of Mount Gilboa, that's what that plain looks like. So that they would have had the battle there, and they died right there at the foothill. That's Mount Tabor, I believe, in the distance. Now notice what we're starting to get as we're moving further north. More agriculture, wheat fields. So maybe you had that picture of, Jesus is going from Galilee down to Jerusalem, and the apostles are on their camels going through the desert. Well, that's not true. It's actually as you move up into the north, you get to the area around Galilee, that's like the breadbasket of Israel. You start to have wheat fields. It's no longer quite as rocky. Get a little bit more rain. All right. And of course, it goes all the way west out to the sea in the next picture. Yeah, all the way up to the Mediterranean Sea on that one. So Manasseh has like a nice wide swath, pretty much all the way west to all the way east, if you count both half tribes. All right, and then the next one's going to be Benjamin. All right, and that's going to be in Joshua 18. It says, the whole congregation of the children of Israel assembled together at Shiloh and set up the tabernacle of meeting there, and the land was subdued before them. But there remained among the children of Israel 7 tribes which had not yet received their inheritance. So these first allotments were given out specifically. And then it says, then Joshua said to the children of Israel, how long will you neglect to go and possess the land which the Lord God of your fathers has given you? And pick out from among you 3 men of each tribe, and I'll send them, and they shall rise and go through the land, survey it according to their inheritance, and come back to me. and they shall divide it into 7 parts. So he's basically sending out a survey crew. Go ahead and divide the land up, and then when you get back, we're going to cast lots and see which tribe will get which division that you just went out and surveyed. So if we keep reading, you shall survey the land in 7 parts and bring the survey here to me that I may cast lots for you here before the Lord our God. But the Levites have no part among you, for the priesthood of the Lord is their inheritance. And Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh have received their inheritance beyond the Jordan on the east already, okay? So then the men arose, and they did their thing, and they came back. And Joshua cast lots for them in Shiloh before the Lord, and there Joshua divided the land to the children of Israel according to their division. And this is in verse 11. The lot of the tribe of the children of Benjamin came up, so they came up first, and the territory of their lot came out between the children of Judah and the children of Joseph. So they're going to be sandwiched in between Judah and Ephraim. And their border on the north side began at the Jordan River, and the border went up to the side of Jericho on the north and went up through the mountains westward. It ended at the wilderness of Beth-aven, and it goes on and on about the different cities and stuff that are in there. So let's take a look at some of the terrain there. This is in central Jordan. This is actually modern-day Jericho, because that's part of the tribe of Benjamin. Let's look at the next picture. And this is going up the hill toward Jerusalem, which would have fallen also inside the allotment for Benjamin. And then the last one there is a picture of part of the city of Jerusalem. That's not the old city, with the walls and stuff. That's looking from there toward a newer part of the city. But you'll notice it's still kind of that real craggy, rocky, pretty dry. All right. So we want to go to the next one, and we can keep reading. This will be in Joshua 19. The second lot came out for Simeon, for the tribe of the children of Simeon, according to their families, and their inheritance was within the inheritance of the children of Judah. So basically, what happens is the original allotment given to Judah is just too big for the Jews to inhabit all of that. So they subdivide that up and give some of it to Simeon, kind of centered around the city of Beersheba. So if we want to go and look at some pictures of that, I remember this is pretty far south, so what are we expecting to see down here? It's pretty dry. I think there's another picture there. Again, yeah, pretty dry down there, pretty deserty. In the springtime, you'll get some rains. Get some rains over the winter. They talk about the former and the latter rains. It'll green up for a couple months out of the year, but for the majority of the year, it's going to be pretty dry. Might be good for grazing some goats or something, but not so much for like large-scale agriculture. You're not going to be planting wheat or barley. You're not going to be growing apple orchards or anything like that down south. All right. Okay, so we can go on. After Simeon in southern Israel comes Zebulun. So this is verse 10 of chapter 19. The third lot came out for the children of Zebulun, according to their family. Their border went to the west and to Maralah, went to Dabasheth, and extended along to the brook that is east of Jokneam. And then it talks about from here to there, down to the different cities. And this was the inheritance of the children of Zebulun, according to their families, these cities with their villages. So Zebulun, now we're jumping pretty far north. Right, so again, there's there's mountains wherever you go. We're seeing a lot more greenery, some more trees. All right, go to the next picture. Again, nice springtime shot there. Okay. And then after Zebulun is going to be Issachar. So we're in verse 17 of Joshua 19. The fourth lot came out to Issachar for the children of Issachar according to their families, and their territory went to Jezreel and included Chesulloth, Shunem, Ephraim, Cheyenne, and and it talks about this was the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Issachar according to their families and the cities and their villages. And again, this is right next to Zebulun there. If we will want to look at some of the pictures, and this actually does abut the Sea of Galilee toward the southern side. So they've actually got a bit of water that they can do some irrigation with. And what you're going to find there is that it's quite a bit more green. Go to the next picture. And this includes Megiddo. So that's the valley of Megiddo there. So you talk about Armageddon. That's looking for Megiddo down across the valley. And it talks about the armies will assemble. Well, they certainly can. You got a nice wide valley. It's very flat, stretching on south out into the distance. All right. Okay, you go to the next one. The fifth lot came out for the tribe of the children of Asher, according to their families. And their territory included Helkath, Hali, Beton, Akshaph, and so on and so forth, Mount Carmel, westward. So they're going west to the sea, to the Mediterranean Sea. So if we want to take a look at some of the pictures there. So again, mountainous, but green, got some trees up there. And it goes all the way west to the sea, to the Mediterranean Sea. Nice vacation spots there in northern Israel, if you want to be down on the beach. All right. Okay, so that's Asher. The next one's going to be Naphtali, or however you pronounce that, Naphtali. The sixth lot came out to the children of Naphtali. For the children of Naphtali, according to their families, and their border began at Heleph, enclosing the territory from the terebinth tree at Zanaim. Literally, it starts at this tree, and then you go this direction. It was very specific. If you would have lived back then, you would have known exactly where it started. Of course, that does us no good now. But notice that it was very specific. And it lists the different names and the directions that it goes. And this was the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Naphtali, according to their families and their cities and their villages. What does that look like? Again, let's go ahead and zoom in and take a look at what that looks like. This is on the north of the Sea of Galilee. When it says Christ went up into the mountains to be alone, there are some cliffs that overlook the Sea of Galilee there, kind of on the northwest shore. And this is, you go up there, it's called Arbel. We stayed there a couple times. It's a beautiful area. They grow citrus. You smell the orange blossoms in the spring, and you hear the sheep, they're getting ready to shear. And just really pretty up there. So this is the area around which Christ based his ministry when he started. You could go to the next picture. They can actually support quite a bit of agriculture up there. So this is like when you're reading and it says, he fed the 5,000, and there's all these people always coming because up there around the Sea of Galilee, we're actually getting more rain. They can fish in the water. They can get some irrigation from the lake, and they can actually support a lot of little villages with all those people. So the fact that 5,000 people were able to leave their village and within walking distance to get somewhere, it's not that far-fetched. Like, it's very within the realm of possibility up there in that region. Let's go to the last one there. And that's looking down across at the Sea of Galilee. So very pretty up there as we move into northern Israel, and they've got enough water for once. All right. And the last, one more picture, just to wake you up. Because of the wars there between the Israelis and the Muslims, danger, landmines. So you got to be careful where you go when you're touring around northern Israel. All right. And then if we want to go to the last one, the last of the lots to get divided. Down in verse 40, it says, the seventh lot came out for the tribe of the children of Dan, according to their families. Sorry, Dan, you're last. No offense. And the territory of their inheritance was Zorah, Eshtaol, Ir-Shemesh, a bunch of names I can't pronounce. And this is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Dan, according to their families, these cities with their villages. So they get a coastal portion down in in central Israel. So if we want to zoom in there and take a look at some of that down there. This is where modern day Tel Aviv is. So you get kind of out on the coastal plain. You finally leave the mountains for once. All right, next picture is looking at Tel Aviv. Very modern beach town. You go there these days, it's like you're in Southern California or something. There's guys lifting weights on the beach. All right. And just so that we don't leave out the Levites, even though they didn't get any land, the next chapter does talk about the cities of the Levites. And there were 48 cities dispersed through the other tribes. Now, I'm not going to read that because, again, that's 48 names that I can't pronounce. And they've actually found where a lot of these are. So I think the stars on this map represent the ones that they're actually fairly certain that they've found. If you are quick enough and you can count them before we go to the next slide, you'll notice only about half of the stars. That's not 48, that's only about 24. So they don't know where a lot of those are. In fact, down there in the desert, as you get further south into Simeon and Judah, where there's not really much left, they don't know where any of those are, even though it says, there were 13 in the land of Simeon. We don't know where they are. And, that's for the archaeologists to find, I guess, at some point, maybe. But notice they're scattered out, kind of, it seems random, just like the lots seem random, scattered out through the rest of the tribes. All right, so let's go to the next one, and this is where I kind of want to open it up for you guys. Because we're thinking about overall impressions. Kind of, for those of you who have never been there before, maybe these are some of the first pictures you've seen going from the south all the way up to the north, on the east side, on the west side of the Jordan. What are your first impressions? What is it like? Did it correct some preconceived notions, about riding down from Bethlehem on a camel or something? Any comments? So I know that for me, Amber and I to actually see it in person. What do you think, Dan?
Well, one of the things is, modern time, it's going to be a lot easier to live in some of those areas. But back then, I can imagine there was a lot of jealousy, like, oh man, we got the wrong lot here. Because we don't have all the technology to pump water, to steal stuff from the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were in Judah and you're down there pretty far south where it's pretty desertous, and you see Asher gets this coastal in the north, like modern resort community with palm trees and stuff, you might be a little bit jealous. Had another hand up back there? Yeah.
Yeah, you also see the critical nature of weather.
That's
going to be needed, especially in the southern part of the country.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. What the weather is a lot is going to depend on the weather. If the weather is good, you eat that year. If you go for 3 years without rain, because God told Elijah to come prophesy that you're not going to get any rain, you're going to be in dire straits. Anything else that we noticed, Cheryl?
I didn't realize there was that much canyon land.
Yes. Yeah, canyons. It talks about, the land where you're going is a land of, hills and valleys. And I know there's a popular Christian music song, the God of the hills and valleys. Almost the whole area, except when you get down into the plains around the Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea, it's all like just mountain after mountain after mountain. Only Mount Hermon up north actually has snow on it because it's just so warm everywhere else. All right, anything else? And we'll look at that. So if we want to go to the next slide, I think we kind of mentioned this. You move from the very dry down in the Negev desert, down in southern Judah, going up to semi-dry in the north, and it's kind of like Southern California. It can be very fertile if you have the water. You can grow oranges and avocados and stuff, but only if you get enough water. So that's definitely one theme that we see here about the climate. And we'll talk more about that later in the sermon. Okay, and another theme, if we want to go to the next slide, was the terrain. And so we had that mentioned as well. The mountains and the valleys. Everywhere you go, the bottom picture is looking from Mount Nebo. So the east, modern-day Jordan, very hilly. In fact, when it talks about the portions, it says, going up the hill up until a certain point. So they had the hilliest part, because once you get far enough east, you get into the plain, and it goes out into the deserts of Iraq and Saudi Arabia. But it was the hilly part specifically that the children of Israel inherited. Whether you're in the south, whether you're in the north, whether you're in the east, whether you're in the west, almost everywhere is going to be just covered in hills, and very rocky and craggy hills at that. Not going to be easy. They're going to have to work for everything they want to get out of that land. All right, and then if we go to the next one, I mentioned this when we were looking at the Jordan River. If you look at the whole Middle Eastern region, if you click a couple forward, you've got big rivers up in Iraq, modern-day Iraq. This is Mesopotamia, Babylon and Persia. You got Tigris and Euphrates up there. If you go to the west, you've got the longest river in the world, the Nile, in Egypt. And that makes agriculture very easy when you're in those places. You get plenty of water. You can do lots of irrigation. As long as you stay close to the river, you can feed millions and millions of people. Like, that's why ancient Egypt had such a powerful empire in the ancient world. But right there, if you go to the next one, right there where we're talking about, there's no major waterways, none. You got these little canyon creeks. You got the Jordan River, but it doesn't go anywhere. It empties into the Dead Sea, and then it evaporates. So if we want to go to the last one. So the question for us that I put on the slide, and I've got a series of questions here on the back of the handout at the bottom. It's kind of just why. God could have chosen any spot in the whole area, in the whole old world, anywhere in Europe or Africa or Asia. Like, he could have put his people wherever he wanted to. Why did he pick that spot? Because it doesn't seem like it's got a whole lot going for it. They're right in the middle of all these invading armies. It's very hot and dry. It's hilly. It's rocky. They're going to have to work very hard. Why did he pick this spot? And then if we're saying that he picked this spot, he must have had his reasons for picking this spot versus any other spot. Well, then what are those reasons? Because we know that God doesn't just do things willy-nilly. So if he had reasons, what are those reasons? And then if he had reasons for putting them in a hard situation at that time, what does that mean for all the rest of his people down through time, all the way to us in modern times? Like, where he put me, where he put you. Maybe he has reasons for putting us in the hard situations that we sometimes find ourselves in. And maybe they're the same reasons, generally speaking, as the ones why he put the Israelites where he put them. That through hardship, there's going to be some end goal. So that's what we're going to do for the sermon. So we're going to end for the Bible study. I hope that wasn't just seem like a brain dump and you're like, trying to keep it from leaking out your ears because we talked about all the different names of the cities and this and that. That's not the important thing. The important thing is these last things right at the very end of thinking about why God put them there. Why was that good for them? And then, as we'll see in the sermon after lunch, why God puts us where he puts us and how that benefits us